there's nothing that really exists that's like that. And I wanted to create these Victorian elements on this space age thing, and my reference for looking at this stuff was more sort of the little things that hold test tubes together, and you know, kind of finer details, things like that. But yeah, I do look at reference. I do have a really huge library of model aircraft and actual photographs of aircraft and photographs that I've taken at aerospace museums. I've also, you know, stuff that pictures that I've taken at the zoo. But the reason why all this stuff happened with me was originally I was a creature designer. You know, originally it was always stuff like this, right? And one time I interviewed for a job, and I didn't have enough robots in my portfolio, so I didn't get the job, and I was so mad. So for weeks, all I did was try and draw robots and mechs and things, and started to develop a facility after looking at, you know, you look at reference, you draw, you look and you draw, and it starts to develop. I hope that answered your question.
I think it did. I'm going to move on to the next question. I believe it's from Rina Cheng. Basically, Rina, if you're there, I'm going to see if you have a mic or not, because you didn't tell me in the post. So if you're there, can you say hello? Rina? Rina? Okay, I guess not. Well, anyway, they asked, have you done any character designs for animation? If so, how is it different from character design for games? I don't have, okay, she did say it, okay. So if you can answer that, Carlo. The question was, have you done any character designs for animation? If so, how is it different from character design for games?
Well, it's not that different. I've done some stuff for smaller projects for friends of mine, but the closest to it is designing animation style objects for video games. I mean, I've done a lot of that, working on Ratchet and Clank, and you know, more cartoony stuff like the stuff in World of Warcraft. Now, really, there's the difference between both film and animation and games are the goals are slightly different. There's an overarching goal of you're still trying to tell a story, but the stories have a different focus. For example, it's much more important to show emotion as a storytelling device in animation than and in video game, although you might want that, your main goal is to be able to tell the feedback for the player experience. Now, if the main character is what you're dealing with, then it's how, for example, when he hits another enemy, like how quickly does that, you know, how quickly does he do it? You know, does it feel responsive? Does it feel like if you press a button, does he have to go through a long animation loop, for example? That makes him less responsive. Whereas if you have maybe 2 or 3 frames when you're doing an attack animation, then you know it feels more responsive. So you have to design around that. Like there's a reason why, say, Dante from Devil May Cry has a huge sword, because it has to read really well in fast animations, because basically you have his get ready animation and then his end animation, and in between there's sort of a 1 or 2 frame quick weapon trail. So yeah, that's the main focus in games, player responsiveness. Whereas in traditional or even digital film animation, the main goal is how expressive he is in order to, you know, push the storyline more. And so you design the face, the physicality, all that stuff based around it. Now, both of them can still be, both of them can still work, and both of them are not mutually exclusive. Like there's going to be times when you're going to need emotional content in games, and then there's going to be times when in movies when you're really focused in on the character's quote-unquote special attack. For example, Toothless in How to Train Your Dragon. He's an animated film character, but his breath weapon, the way he flies, all that stuff is relevant to the audience experience. So something that normally would be great to translate into video games also works well for story. Okay, next question.
Okay, thank you, Carlo. The next question is from Jose Artundo. Let me make sure if he has a mic or not. So, because Jose didn't say either, but so Jose, if you're there, I want you to say hello. Can you hear us, Jose? Jose? Okay, I'm going to just read the question that he asked. It's similar to the last question, but I think a little bit different in that he asked, what's the difference between a design for World of Warcraft, low polygon and small texture stuff, and a design for film, fully detailed?
Oh, right. Well, as you said, it's low poly stuff. Now, not only is it going to be low poly, it's going to be fairly small on your screen. So when I first arrived at Blizzard, I didn't understand. I was young and I didn't understand all that stuff, and I was used to doing stuff for film. I was doing things that were designed to be far more subtle. If I were to design, we've got a creature like this, and the limbs are really way too small. As much as they're exaggerated here, they're really way too small for something like World of Warcraft. So what you do is you find points of exaggeration, whether that's going to be the shoulders or the helmet and things like that, the weapons, and then you design them big. You turn everything up to 11, and you make it colorful, and you put fiery textures on it. Not something that would work well if you were doing, The Mist, as a movie. Although there are some movies where, like Hellboy, for example, where things are a little bit more exaggerated. But yeah, what's important is strong silhouette read, bright color, like this. The blades, the wrist blades, are huge. If you had that in, say, in Lord of the Rings, it would look ridiculous. And that's sort of the main drift of that sort of stuff. You just have to be a little bit louder. Now, part of the reason for that too is you avoid the uncanny valley, especially when you don't have a lot of fine animations for the face and things like that. People tend to be more forgiving of an exaggerated character than they are of something that's really close to human. As a quick explanation for people that haven't heard of what the uncanny valley is, it's this idea that was put forward by a Japanese roboticist back in the 70s, where the closer you get to human, the more you empathize with the object, right? For example, Mickey Mouse has some very human traits. But the closer you get, there's this point where you stop looking at what's correct about it and you start nitpicking what's wrong with it. There's a couple movies that have come out, for example, say Polar Express, where it's almost there human-wise, but there's some things missing. So it feels a little bit creepy, and doesn't quite work well